Carl Denton's quiet life of petty theft shattered the night he stormed Franklin Market with a hidden gun, turning a simple shoplifting attempt into a rain-soaked manhunt that left an entire town on edge. Rain drizzled over the small town of Westbrook, turning the sidewalks slick and shining under the pale glow of street lamps. Franklin Market, a 24-hour convenience and electronics store, stood out like a bright island in the quiet night. The parking lot was nearly empty, save for a few scattered cars and the faint hum of a vending machine near the entrance. Inside, shelves stood neat and orderly, stocked for the late-night crowd that rarely came. Employees moved lazily through their routines, sweeping floors, checking price tags, wiping counters. It was the kind of slow, predictable evening where nothing dramatic was expected to happen. Yet, in a corner of the store where the security cameras barely reached, a lone figure blended into the shadows, moving with an unsettling purpose. The person wore a dark hooded jacket that dripped with rainwater, sleeves pulled tight over gloved hands. Step by step, the figure advanced through the aisles with calm precision, pausing only to glance at the cameras and the few late-night shoppers. A basket hung from one arm, filled with ordinary groceries, bread, a bottle of water, a packet of instant noodles meant to look innocent. But hidden beneath the jacket was a faded backpack, the zipper slightly open. With movements so smooth they seemed practiced, expensive batteries and small electronics slid from the shelves and disappeared into the bag. Not a single rustle or clatter betrayed the theft. Near the store's front counter, a cashier stifled a yawn, unaware of the quiet crime unfolding just a few feet away. A security guard leaned against a wall near the entrance, scrolling through his phone and sipping stale coffee. Outside, in a far corner of the lot, where the lights didn't quite reach, a black sedan idled with its headlights off. Its engine purred faintly, barely audible above the soft hiss of rain. Anyone who noticed might have assumed the driver was simply waiting for a friend, but the car's placement was too deliberate, its windows too dark to see inside. The hooded figure continued the silent collection of goods, eyes darting to the checkout lanes and the door. Every movement carried the weight of calculation, the confidence of someone who had rehearsed this moment many times before. A sudden gust of wind rattled the glass doors at the entrance, but nothing broke the thief's concentration. To anyone glancing casually, it looked like a late-night shopper finishing a quiet errand. Yet the tension in the air felt different, almost electric. Something was building, something that would soon shatter the calm routine of Franklin Market and set the entire town on edge. The sudden scream of the store's alarm shattered the quiet night like glass breaking. A sharp electronic wail bounced off every aisle, startling the few remaining shoppers and sending the cashier's coffee cup clattering to the floor. The hooded figure froze for the briefest second, eyes narrowing beneath the shadow of the hood, then moved with chilling speed. A single push of the door swung it wide, letting the damp air rush inside. The security guard, jarred from his phone, lunged forward to block the exit. His instincts were good, but he had no time to prepare for what came next. In one swift motion, the thief yanked a handgun from beneath the jacket. The metallic flash caught the overhead lights, freezing the guard mid-step. He instinctively raised his hands, the breath caught in his throat. The thief said nothing, but the weapon's silent threat was enough to hold the entire room hostage. A mother clutching a small grocery bag ducked behind a shelf, her eyes wide with disbelief. The cashier stood frozen, torn between reaching for the phone and staying still. The alarm wailed on, its shrill tone cutting through the tense silence like a warning no one could obey. Moving backward toward the door, the thief's every action was steady and deliberate. The hood never slipped, and the grip on the weapon never wavered. Rain spattered in through the open entrance, pooling on the tiles as the figure stepped into the night. The black sedan in the corner of the lot came alive with a soft hum, its taillights glowing faint red through the mist. Without a glance back, the thief disappeared into the dark lot, leaving the stunned onlookers behind as if they were nothing more than obstacles in a plan carefully laid out. By the time the first police cruiser arrived, only the echo of the alarm and a few trembling witnesses remained. Officers fanned out through the lot, flashlights slicing through the drizzle. But the black sedan was gone. Tire marks in the wet pavement hinted at a hasty exit, leading toward the highway. Inside the store, detectives quickly realized this wasn't just a case of stolen goods. The presence of a gun changed everything, turning petty theft into a violent crime. The guard described eyes that seemed cold and unhurried, the look of someone who had crossed a line long before stepping through those sliding doors. Westbrook had seen theft before, But this was different, a bold act of defiance that felt like the start of something much worse. Detectives worked through the night, piecing together every clue left behind in the frantic escape. Security footage from Franklin Market provided the first break, a grainy image of the black sedan's license plate captured just before it vanished into the mist. Running the plate led them to a car reported stolen 3 days earlier from a parking garage 2 towns away. The discovery deepened the mystery. Whoever planned this theft had prepared carefully, leaving few personal traces. Still, the way the thief moved, calm and methodical, hinted at someone with experience, someone used to staying one step ahead. A call came in just after dawn from a maintenance worker inspecting an abandoned farmhouse near the county border. He reported a suspicious vehicle parked behind the property and a door hanging loosely on its hinges. Detectives rushed to the scene, their tires throwing up mud on the narrow dirt road. Inside the sagging structure, they found a trail of evidence, a half-eaten sandwich on a dusty counter, a crumpled map with several highways highlighted, and a collection of stolen electronics piled neatly in a corner. Most revealing were the fingerprints lifted from a chipped coffee mug. Within hours, the prints came back with the name Carl Denton. The report detailed a long record of petty theft, shoplifting, and minor break-ins. Denton was no stranger to crime, but he had never before carried a weapon. His sudden leap from low-level offenses to armed robbery puzzled investigators. Friends from his past described him as reckless but not violent, a man who avoided confrontation whenever possible. Something had changed, and the detectives were determined to find out what. While police processed the farmhouse, another call pulled them in a new direction. A small electronics shop on the far side of town had been broken into overnight. Surveillance cameras captured a figure dressed in the same dark clothing, stuffing devices into a duffel bag with frantic speed. A witness described a man muttering under his breath, pacing as though fighting an invisible opponent before vanishing into the pre-dawn shadows. The description matched Carl Denton perfectly. The pattern was becoming clear. Denton was moving fast, desperate to gather something: money, goods, or perhaps the nerve to disappear completely. Every hour he stayed free made him bolder and more unpredictable. Officers tightened the search, setting up roadblocks and alerting neighboring counties. Yet with each lead they followed, Denton seemed to stay just beyond their reach, a ghost slipping through the rain-soaked edges of Westbrook. Night settled over the outskirts of a neighboring county as a thin fog crept across the empty streets. Patrol cars cruised slowly through gas station lots and deserted service roads, their headlights cutting narrow tunnels of light through the haze. After hours of scanning backroads, an alert finally came from a rookie officer parked near an aging fuel stop on the highway's edge. A black sedan, matching the stolen vehicle's description, sat angled behind the station, its engine silent and windows blackened by grime. The officer kept his lights off and radioed for backup, his pulse quickening as he watched for movement. Minutes stretched like hours. A flicker of motion inside the station broke the stillness. Through the fogged glass, a lone figure stood at the counter, shoulders hunched, hood pulled low. The officer recognized the posture from the security footage, calm yet charged with tension. He stepped from his car, careful to keep his boots silent on the damp pavement, and positioned himself behind a concrete pillar near the entrance. The night smelled of wet asphalt and gasoline, a heavy mix that made every breath sharp. Inside, Carl Denton placed a handful of crumpled bills on the counter, buying a bottle of water while scanning the aisles with restless eyes. The clerk, unaware of the danger, rang up the sale and handed over change. When Denton stepped outside, the chill of the fog seemed to follow him like a warning. The officer raised a hand and called out a clear command to stop. For a fraction of a second, Denton froze, his body tightening like a spring. Then, without a word, he spun toward the alley that ran behind the station. The officer moved quickly, his radio crackling with urgent updates to the arriving backup units. He rounded the corner just as Denton's figure blurred into the narrow alley, slick with rain and littered with trash bins. Streetlights overhead flickered, throwing quick flashes of light and shadow across the walls. Denton's shoes splashed through shallow puddles as he glanced back, a metallic glint appearing briefly in his hand. The unmistakable outline of a handgun caught the weak light, sending a surge of adrenaline through the officer's chest. Instead of continuing to flee, Denton pivoted sharply, his movements sudden and aggressive. He lowered his shoulders and rushed straight toward the officer, the weapon raised and ready. In that tight alleyway, every sound seemed amplified: the echo of footsteps, the distant wail of approaching sirens, the rapid thud of a heart bracing for the next instant, when the standoff would reach its deadly breaking point. The alley erupted in chaos the moment Denton charged. Rain-slicked bricks reflected flashing red and blue as backup cruisers screeched to a halt at the mouth of the narrow lane. The first officer steadied his stance, the roar of blood in his ears nearly drowning out the rising chorus of sirens. Denton's face twisted with a wild desperation, his hood falling back to reveal eyes that seemed both determined and lost. He gripped the handgun in trembling hands, every muscle coiled for a final, reckless act. From behind the officer came the quick shuffle of boots as reinforcements fanned out, their radios snapping with terse commands. "Drop the weapon," echoed sharply through the alley, but Denton did not slow. He barreled forward, shoulders low, mud spraying beneath his feet. The officer's breath caught as he adjusted his aim, but a sudden crack split the night before he could fire. A single shot rang out from the far end of the alley. One of the arriving officers had taken it. The bullet struck Denton's arm with a dull thud, spinning him sideways. His handgun clattered to the wet pavement, skidding across a puddle before stopping against a rusted drain. Denton collapsed hard, a choked cry escaping as he clutched the bleeding wound. For a moment, the only sounds were the hiss of rain and the echo of that single gunshot fading into the distance. Officers surged forward, weapons trained, until they were certain the threat was over. One kicked the handgun away while another pressed a knee gently to Denton's back to keep him still. Medics rushed in moments later, the sharp scent of antiseptic mixing with the damp night air as they bound the injury and lifted him onto a stretcher. His face, once so guarded, now showed only exhaustion and defeat. Investigators later uncovered the spiral that had driven him here. Mounting debts from gambling and small-time deals had drawn the attention of violent collectors. Denton, cornered by threats and panic, believed a fast haul of valuable electronics would buy his way out. But each theft fed a growing fear, pushing him from petty crime into armed desperation. The Franklin Market robbery became a warning whispered across Westbrook and neighboring towns. A simple theft had transformed into a near-fatal encounter, proving how quickly desperation could ignite into violence. Shopkeepers tightened their security, and officers replayed the night's events, reminded that even the quietest town could erupt in danger when fear and recklessness collided in a single, storm-soaked alley.